While Donald Trump easily defeated Kamala Harris in the presidential election and Republicans absolutely clobbered Democrats in the U.S. Senate, the U.S. House of Representatives has not been called by many news sources, with more than a dozen races being too close to call. So in today's video, I'll be analyzing each of the uncalled races and making my determination as to how many seats each party will win in the House of Representatives. Let's start filling in this map geographically, starting off here with the state of Washington, where incumbent Representative Dan Newhouse faces Republican challenger Gerard Sessler. Now, this district should not be competitive in theory at all. Dan Newhouse is a decades-long incumbent who has served this district for a very long time. That being said, he was one of the impeachment 10 who voted to impeach Trump in 2021. Thus, he has whet the appetite of the former president and now president-elect to endorse Gerard Sessler. That being said, Dan Newhouse is up by 5.4%, and he's up by more than 13,400 votes, with 86% of the votes in. Additionally, the more recent batches of votes have favored Dan Newhouse, and thus this district is almost certainly to go for the incumbent Republican. And as well as that, several news sources, including MSNBC and Decision Desk HQ, has called this race for Dan Newhouse. It theoretically doesn't really matter either way, because it's two Republicans fighting against each other. Thus, the state of Washington right now is going to go for the Republican Party. I'm going to put it as safe Republican. Now going to Oregon's 5th District over here, where incumbent Republican Representative Lori Chavez DeRaymer is facing a strong Democratic opponent, Janelle Bynum. Lori Chavez DeRaymer was able to narrowly defeat a Democrat there in 2022. However, she faces more trouble in this election, with the Democratic challenger being much more centrist than the pretty extreme Democrat back in 2022, Jamie McLean Skinner. As you can see right now, although 11,000 votes might not seem like a lot, 87% of the votes are counted, and thus the incumbent Republican needs to make up the gap by like 20% in the remaining votes. She has to win them 60-40 or so, and that's simply not really possible. There's only a few votes from Monmouth County, which would favor the Democrat, so that is good news for the Republican Party. However, the more conservative areas, specifically Lynn County, is 92% reported. Lori Chavez DeRaymer is not going to net a lot of votes there. Additionally, Marion County, while there's still 25% of the votes to count, this county is not as populated. There's still some votes from the Democratic areas, and those are areas where Democrats have ran up pretty substantial margins. So it does not look too good for Lori Chavez DeRaymer. There's no way where she can make up 11,000 votes with only about 40,000 votes to count, especially since a lot of that vote is still in Democratic areas like the suburban areas around Portland and Clackamas County, as well as the Democratic areas in Deschutes County where Bend is located. So this district is going to go for the Democratic Party, in my opinion. I'm going to put it as safe. Now we're going to go to the state of Alaska, because California is quite complicated, and I'm going to get to there later. So in Alaska right now, Republican Nick Begich is facing Democrat Mary Peltola. There's roughly about a 10,130 vote gap between these two candidates, with Nick Begich up at 49.4% to Mary Peltola at 45.4%. Now, it's worth noting that there's still about 50 to 60,000 votes left in Alaska's 1st congressional district that has not been counted because of the fact that Alaska is a very sparsely populated state. There's not a lot of polling locations, but it's pretty big geographically. Thus, there's still some vote to count to make this gap either wider or tighter. Now, based on the votes we've seen in the last couple of hours or so, it does seem like that Mary Peltola may make up the gap a little bit, and Nick Begich will probably be up by around 2% when the first round is said and done. That being said, the state of Alaska does have ranked choice voting, so if both candidates are below 50%, which is what I'm predicting right now, this race would go to immediate ranked choice round or considered an instant runoff. Now, there's a Democrat here that will probably help Mary Peltola's numbers, but Alaska independence voters generally vote for the Republicans. Thus, I do predict Nick Begich will win, although there's still a lot of vote left, and there's not a lot of clarity of exactly where those votes are remaining, or which side those ballots will lean towards. Thus, I'm putting this as leaning Republican. I'm not too confident, but I still think that the Republicans, specifically Nick Begich, is favored, because Trump did really well in the state of Alaska. Next up, we go to the state of Arizona, and specifically its 6th congressional district, where incumbent Republican Juan Cicomani faces Democrat Christine Engel. Now, a few news sources have called this race for one Sisomani, and it doesn't look good for the Democratic Party. For one thing, Sisomani is up by about 5,000 votes, with 87% counted, which means that there's only about 40 to 50,000 votes left. Now, there's two counties where the votes are still outstanding, Pima County and Kokoshé County. In Pima County, where Christine Engle is probably hoping to make up the gap, there's about 30,000 votes, give or take, outstanding, and she's probably going to win them by about 8 to 10%, closely resembling the current margin in Pima County, which would probably net her about 3,000 votes. In Kokoshé County, one Sisomani still has about 5,000 vote net there, and when you calculate that, that gives Sisomani about a 7,000 vote edge district-wide. And there's not really that much votes left, which means that the margin of error isn't great, so Sisomani is definitely the favorite in this district. A few sources have called it for the Republicans, and I have to say, in my opinion, this is a safe Republican district. It should be called by the New York Times. Now going to Colorado. In the 8th Congressional District, Republican Gabe Evans faces Democrat Yadira Calvaravo, if that's how you pronounce the name, and the Democrat is down by roughly 2,600 votes. The problem is there's no votes left to count. There's maybe 3,000 to 4,000 absentee ballots left to count, but considering the gap, it's not going to be enough for the Democrat to make it up, and the Democrat there has already conceded this race. So it's not really that worth covering. She also did about 3% worse than where she performed in 2022 in Adams County, the base of the district, explaining her loss. Thus, I'm going to put this district right now as safe Republican. Next up, we go to the 49th Congressional District in a race between Mike Levin and Matt Gunderson. This district, in my opinion, should be called for Matt Levin already. The mail-in ballots / absentee ballots have been favoring Levin by a pretty substantial margin, and 82% of the votes have been counted. I don't see any way for Matt Gunderson to really overtake that lead. The only good thing for the Republican, there's still more vote from the Orange County part of the district, which is more conservative than the San Diego part of the Democratic district. That being said, this is still not a race where the Republicans are favored to win. Republicans never really targeted Mike Levin, and the current absentee ballots that have been counted in the more recent dumps have favored the Democrat drastically. Thus, I'm predicting right now Mike Levin to win the seat, and I think that it should be called at this point. It's going to be safe Democrat. Another seat that has been hotly contested is the 47th Congressional District between Dave Min and Scott Ball. Now, this district was always rated in the lean Democratic column, and the fact that it's super close is not a good sign for the Democratic Party. That being said, Dave Min is favored just because, again, of the absentee ballot phenomenon. The last time I recorded this video, I believe Scott Ball was still up a little bit. Now he's down by about 1% or so. So it definitely doesn't look the best for the Republican Party in this district. The absentee ballots are favoring Dave Min, and they will probably continue to favor him. I don't think the district should be called yet just because there's still more uncertainty, but nevertheless, I'm going to put this as lead Democratic. Now we go to the 45th District, where on FiveThirtyEight, this was rated the most competitive House district of any of the 435 House districts. And right now, it looks like to be one of the most contested districts as well. Michelle Steele, in my opinion, when I made my House prediction, I didn't really think that she was in much trouble. She won her re-election in 2022 by 6%, and I really didn't think she was going to be in much trouble in this election as well. However, she has proven me wrong. Derek Tran is only down by 3,900 votes or so, and that gap has been rapidly dwindling. In the last video I posted, I believe that Michelle Steele was up 52.5% to Derek Tran at 47.5% with a 15,000 vote gap. Now the gap has dropped to about 4,000 votes, in fact a little bit less than that. That's because batch after batch of votes, those votes have favored the Democrat Derek Tran. Michelle Steele's problem is that, again, she floundered on the abortion issue, and she really didn't give a definitive answer, and it looks like that's really hurting her. The one good thing for Michelle Steele, there's more vote from the Orange County part of the district than there is from the Los Angeles County's part of the district, with Derek Tran doing about 4% worse in Los Angeles than the Democrat did there in 2022. That being said, that could be a sign that the final votes there could favor Derek Tran by more than they are right now, which would be a huge problematic sign for Michelle Steele. And additionally, it's not like the Republican counties favoring Republicans and the Democratic county is actually favoring Democrats. In the latest batch from Orange County, I believe Derek Tran got 60% of the vote in the latest batch from Orange County. which is why Michelle Steele's lead has been dwindling. No matter if you're counting votes from Los Angeles or Orange, it seems like the most recent absentee ballots have favored a Democrat. And considering that there's only about a 3,900 vote gap to catch, and there's roughly, I would say, about 50,000 votes outstanding, it looks pretty good for Derek Trent. He needs to win the remaining vote by about 6. In the last batches, he's winning the votes by 15. There's no guarantee that he'll hold that type of momentum, but if he does, he's in a really good position. Right now, I have to say that Derek Trent is favored, which is a different characterization than I had about 4 days ago when I had Michelle Steele as the favorite to win this district. Now I'm going to look at the general picture. Republicans have won in 213 and are leading in 7 seats, while Democrats have won 205 seats and are leading in 10 seats. Now, what are the Republican chances of actually winning the House? In my opinion, it's 100%. I think Republicans should have called races in Washington, California, Arizona, and the state of Colorado, which brings Republicans to 217 seats. And then they just have to win one more, either from California, Alaska, or Iowa, in order to win the House. I think it's a 100% chance Republicans will win the House, but the question is by how much? If Republicans win just 218 seats, that means one defecting Republican, such as David Balladale, would be able to essentially block the Republicans from doing anything. Additionally, it will be kind of like a pain for the Republican Party to nominate their House Speaker, because there could be a Republican who's like, no, I don't like this Speaker, and that process could drag on forever. However, if Republicans are able to win on the higher end of those seats, let's say they're able to flip some in California, in the Los Angeles area, been able to hang on to John Durati's seat, been able to win in the Jared Golden seat in Maine 2nd, you could see Republicans upwards at 224 seats, in which case they have a lot more breathing room. In my opinion, 220 is the most likely scenario. But before we wrap up this video, I'm going to look at the Pennsylvania U.S. Senate race, which has generated a lot of controversy. Now you see, in the Pennsylvania U.S. Senate race, Dave McCormick, the Republican, was largely seen as the underdog, while Bob Casey, the Democrat, was largely seen as an institution in the state of Pennsylvania, or so we thought, because right now, according to the 99% of the votes reported, Bob Casey is down by roughly 35,000 votes, or about 0.51%. And a lot of news sources, including the Associated Press, has already called this race for Dave McCormick. However, Bob Casey refuses to concede, saying that there's still a lot of ballots to be counted in Pennsylvania. And in fact, Decision Desk HQ, the fastest projector of all of these races, they've already called the House for the Republican Party. They called a lot of the seats way faster than the other news sources, have yet to call Pennsylvania for Dave McCormick. And Democrats have not really invited Dave McCormick to the orientation in the Senate this week. So there's a lot of controversy about this race. Some Democrats think it's not over, but Dave McCormick and the Republicans assert it is over. So I'm going to talk about, is it mathematically possible for Bob Casey to win? Now, since I'm answering the question, is it possible for Bob Casey to win, I'm going to assume all the best for the Democratic Party. There's roughly between 60,000 and 120,000 votes left across Pennsylvania. However, not all of those ballots would be counted, because if there's like signature errors, dating errors, and stuff, those ballots could be rejected. And in theory, only about 80% of all absentee ballots are actually counted, which means the remaining ballots left are between 48,000 and 96,000. Now, theoretically, let's say that there's actually about 100,000 ballots left to count, and let's say that all of them are counted for argument's sake in favor of Bob Casey, and the question of whether he can actually pull it out or not. He's down by roughly 35,000 votes, which means he's going to need to make up about a 29% gap. Essentially, he has to win those ballots 65 to 35 by about 29% margin or so. But is that really possible? The largest dump of ballots remaining is in Cambria County. About 10,000 votes are left there. And guess what? Dave McCormick is up there about 2-1. He's going to have 3,000-4,000 from Cambria County alone. That brings his lead up to about 40,000 votes, and there's still about 100,000 votes to count in that scenario. Casey would have to win the remaining ballots about 70-30. Fortunately for him, there's still some ballots in the Philadelphia's county suburbs. And let's say for argument's sake he wins those ballots 80-20. That's the best case scenario. It couldn't really get much better than that. Even then, because there's only about 20 to 30,000 votes left there, he's only going to net about 10 to 15,000 votes from those outstanding ballots. The remaining absentee ballots are scattered all across the state. So let's say that he ties in the absentee ballots in the more working class areas like Lehigh County, as well as the more rural areas which is already a pretty generous estimate for Bob Casey. Guess what? When you do all that math, he's still going to end up being down in the Senate race by between 20,000 and 25,000 votes. There's really not enough math here for Bob Casey to hang on unless something happens that's dramatically out of the ordinary in a recount. And thus, I really think that AP is right to call this race for Dave McCormick. There's no mathematically plausible way for Bob Casey to hang on here. So anyways, thank you for watching today's video. Be sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm sorry about my voice today. I still kind of sick. I have to revise for a lot of exams. Today I took an exam and I'm super tired. So I'm sorry about my voice. I still want to cough right now. And I don't really feel all that pleasant. Anyways, thank you for watching today's video. Thanks for sticking around. I know my audio quality is horrible. But if you watch this entire video, I thank you so much. Goodbye.